Hey, my name is Mark Davis. I want to ask you a question. Are you a perceptive person, or do you know anybody who's really perceptive? The most perceptive person I know by far and away is my wife. I've seen it before. There was a day, this is a while ago when our kids are young. My wife and I are sitting in the living room. Our kids are in the backyard. They're all playing. We're just sitting in the living room talking, and all of a sudden the door busts open and one of our kids comes in absolutely screaming. Parents, have you had a time like that before? Now, there was no bruises, there was no cuts, there was no blood, there was no indication of what had taken place in the backyard. We still have no idea. No indication. And my wife immediately said, "What's wrong with your left foot?" And I looked at her and I said, "How do you know it's her left foot?" And she said, "It sounds like a left foot cry." What? I couldn't believe it. She is an extremely perceptive person, especially with our kids. I'm going to take you to one of my favorite Bible stories. It's in the book of Nehemiah. It's in the Old Testament. It's right before the book of Psalms, if you want to go back there. And Nehemiah is a Jew, but he's living in Babylon. So it's called the exile. And Nehemiah lives in Babylon, but his roots are in Jerusalem. And in chapter 1, what happens is that someone from Jerusalem comes to Nehemiah in Babylon, and this is someone from Nehemiah's old neighborhood, and comes to Nehemiah and tells him the story of what has happened in Jerusalem. The walls are broken down, and the neighborhood is an absolute mess. Now, here's the problem. Nehemiah has a high-paying job. He doesn't want to leave the king of Babylon and go back to Jerusalem because it could be dangerous. He's got a high-paying job, but his heart is absolutely broken. So in chapter 1, verse 4, it says, "When I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days, and I was fasting and praying before the God of heaven." So Nehemiah took a week off, and he prayed and he fasted because he had a major decision. All right, the problem? He wants to go back to Jerusalem, but he works for the king. He makes a lot of money. He's got a lot of influence, and he can't go directly to the king unless he's asked to come. It's all a problem. It's a huge risk if Nehemiah decides to take this risk. And here's another problem. Nehemiah's sad about his old neighborhood, and you can't be in the presence of the king sad. Look at Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 2. It says, "So he said to the king, so the king said to me, 'Why is your face sad? You are not sick, are you? This is nothing but sadness of heart.'" This king, the king of Babylon, was a perceptive man. See, Nehemiah had never been sad in his presence before, and the king realized that he was sad. So here's the thing I really want you to notice. Nehemiah's found a passion for his heart. He's prayed about it. He's fasted about it. But how is he going to make this decision? How is he going to ask the king to let him out of his job to go back to Jerusalem? Here's the verses I want you to notice. Chapter 2, verses 4 to 5. "Then the king said to me, 'What would you request?' Here's Nehemiah's answer. 'So I prayed to the God of heaven, and I said to the king.'" Now that's verses 4 and 5. And there's a period in your Bible. But in the ancient books, it doesn't have a period. It's one continuous thought. You see, Nehemiah was a man who prayed to the God of heaven and said to the king. It was an impossible thing for Nehemiah to ask. He was taking a huge risk in doing it because he was sad and he was asking to leave. But he took the risk because God was placing a passion in his heart. What's something impossible this year that you're asking God for? Is it something about health? Is it something about family? Maybe it's something about finances. Here's Nehemiah's advice. You pray to the God of heaven, don't waste 1 second, and go to the king. It's one continual asking and then going. Maybe you have a wall to build. Maybe there's some past hurts. Maybe there's forgiveness. The first thing you need to do is go to the God of heaven and then go to the king. That's Nehemiah's example.